Imagine feeling a sudden stabbing pain in your hand. You look down, but there's no wound, no blood, no reason for the agony. Miles away, a person you haven't seen in decades has just slammed their hand in a car door. Imagine having a favorite song, a recurring dream, a political opinion that you believe is uniquely yours, only to discover it is a perfect mirror of someone else's. This isn't a thought experiment. For some identical twins, it is the unsettling reality of their existence. They are two separate bodies, two distinct minds, yet they are bound by an invisible thread that seems to defy the known laws of physics and biology. They report shared thoughts, parallel lives, and an unnerving sense of a second self moving through the world in lockstep with their own. How can two individuals, separated at birth and raised in entirely different environments, make the same choices, suffer the same ailments, and develop the same eccentricities? Is this just the greatest coincidence in the history of humanity, repeated over and over again? Or do identical twins represent a crack in our understanding of consciousness, a biological anomaly that points to a form of connection science has yet to name? The truth is far more complex and disturbing than any paranormal explanation. It's a story found not in the occult, but in the cold, hard data of genetics. A story that suggests the very concept of the individual self may be a deeply flawed illusion. To understand this biological enigma, we must travel back to 1940, to the working-class town of Piqua, Ohio. A baby boy, just 4 weeks old, is adopted by the Lewis family. They name him James. 30 miles away, in the city of Dayton, his identical twin brother is adopted by the Springer family. In a staggering coincidence that would set the stage for one of the most important psychological studies of the 20th century, they also name him James. The boys, now Jim Lewis and Jim Springer, grew up with no knowledge of each other's existence. They were raised in different households with different parents, different friends, and different life experiences. On paper, they were perfect subjects for the age-old debate of nature versus nurture. Whatever similarities they might develop would have to be a product of their shared genes, a pure expression of their identical DNA. For 39 years, their lives ran on parallel, unseen tracks. It wasn't until 1979 that Jim Lewis, driven by curiosity, found his brother's contact information and made a call. When they finally met, the reunion was more than just emotional, it was scientifically bewildering. The list of similarities they uncovered was not just long, it was statistically impossible. Both men were 6 feet tall and weighed exactly 180 pounds. Both had a childhood dog they had named Toy. Both had married a woman named Linda, divorced her, and then remarried a woman named Betty. Jim Lewis had named his firstborn son James Allen. Jim Springer had named his James Allen. Both worked as part-time sheriff's deputies. Both were obsessive nail-biters. Both suffered from tension headaches that began at the same age. Both had a workshop in their basement where they built miniature furniture. Both drove the same model of light blue Chevrolet and smoked the same brand of cigarettes. Their lives were not just similar, they were a carbon copy. The personal stakes here were no longer about a heartwarming reunion. Their story became a profound and unsettling challenge to our most cherished beliefs about individuality and free will. If their lives were so heavily scripted by their genes, how much of any of our lives are truly our own? The uncanny nature of twins has haunted the human imagination for millennia. Long before science offered a biological explanation, cultures around the world struggled to interpret the meaning of two identical beings emerging from a single birth. they were often seen as a tear in the fabric of reality, a supernatural event that could be either a divine blessing or a demonic curse. In Roman mythology, the twin brothers Romulus and Remus were descendants of a god, destined to found the world's greatest empire. For the Yoruba people of West Africa, twins were believed to possess special powers, and their arrival was a cause for celebration. But this reverence was often overshadowed by a deep-seated fear. In many other societies, the birth of twins was considered a terrible omen. It was seen as evidence of the mother's infidelity with a spirit or a demon, a violation of the natural order that demanded a grim correction. In these cultures, one or both of the infants were often abandoned or killed at birth to restore cosmic balance. This duality of perception, twins as either gods or monsters, persisted for centuries. It wasn't until the scientific revolution that the mystery began to recede, replaced by a new kind of fascination. In the late 19th century, Sir Francis Galton, a cousin of Charles Darwin, realized that twins offered a perfect natural experiment. By comparing identical twins who share 100% of their genes to fraternal twins who share only 50%, he could begin to untangle the complex contributions of heredity and environment, nature versus nurture. This shifted the perception of twins from supernatural beings to invaluable subjects of scientific inquiry. Yet this new clinical perspective did not entirely erase the cultural unease. The fear of folklore was simply replaced by a more modern anxiety, an unnerving feeling that the similarities between twins were too perfect, too precise. The more scientists studied them, the more they seemed to challenge our fundamental assumptions about what it means to be a unique individual, culminating in the shocking case of the Jim twins and the formal investigation that would follow. The world was about to learn that the truth about twins was stranger than any myth. The investigation into the bizarre reality of twins begins in earnest in 1979 at the University of Minnesota. There, a psychologist named Dr. Thomas Bouchard Jr. read about the incredible reunion of the Jim twins. He saw their story not as a human interest piece, but as a watershed scientific opportunity. He immediately launched what would become the Minnesota Study of Twins Reared Apart, or MISTRA. The goal was audacious: to find and study as many pairs of monozygotic, identical, and dizygotic fraternal twins as possible who had been separated at birth and raised in different environments. This was the ultimate way to isolate the influence of genetics. By removing the shared environment of a family home, any profound similarities that remained between identical twins would have to be, by and large, attributable to their shared DNA. Over 2 decades, Bouchard and his team studied 137 pairs of separated twins, subjecting them to thousands of tests, measuring everything from their IQ and personality traits to their heart rate, brain waves, and even their dental cavities. The results, published in a landmark 1990 paper in the journal Science, were a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the fields of psychology, sociology, and genetics. The central finding was staggering in its implications. As Bouchard himself wrote, on multiple measures of personality and temperament, occupational and leisure time interests, and social attitudes, monozygotic twins reared apart are about as similar as our monozygotic twins reared together. Let that sink in. The experience of being raised in the same home, by the same parents, with the same values and opportunities, had almost no discernible effect on the core personality of these individuals. Identical twins who were strangers to one another were just as alike as those who had shared a bedroom for 18 years. The data was unequivocal. The study found that About 70% of the variance in IQ was due to genes. Personality traits like extroversion, neuroticism, and conscientiousness were found to be about 50% heritable. Even complex traits like religiosity and political orientation showed a strong genetic influence. One pair of twins, both raised in devoutly Catholic households, discovered they were both atheists. Another pair, separated at birth, one raised in a Jewish family in Trinidad and the other in a Nazi household in Germany, met in their 40s. Despite their wildly different upbringings, they shared the same quirky habits. They both read books from back to front, both flushed the toilet before using it, and both loved to sneeze loudly in crowded elevators to watch people jump. This overwhelming evidence for genetic influence immediately forces us to confront the popular misconceptions about twins. The idea of twin telepathy, for instance, has long been a subject of fascination. Stories abound of one twin feeling the pain of the other's injury or knowing they are in trouble from thousands of miles away. While these anecdotes are compelling, rigorous scientific investigation has found no evidence for any kind of paranormal or psychic connection. Researchers like psychologist Susan Blackmore have extensively studied these claims and concluded they are likely the result of a combination of factors. First, two people with identical brains processing the world through the same genetic lens are naturally more likely to have similar thoughts at similar times. Second, the profound emotional bond between twins can create a hyper-awareness of each other's state of being, which can be misinterpreted as telepathy. And finally, there is confirmation bias. We remember the one time a twin had a feeling that turned out to be correct, and we forget the hundreds of times they did not. But if it's not telepathy, what explains the intensity of their connection? A more plausible, though still developing, explanation may lie in our neurology, specifically in the mirror neuron system. Mirror neurons are brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that action. They are believed to be the basis of empathy, allowing us to feel what others are feeling. It is conceivable that in identical twins who shared a womb and have a unique biological attunement to each other from before birth, this system is exceptionally developed. Their uncanny ability to anticipate each other's thoughts and feelings may not be psychic, but rather a form of extreme, neurologically based empathy. However, the scientific investigation doesn't stop at the brain. It goes deeper, to the very cells that make up their bodies, and uncovers a phenomenon even stranger than parallel lives. It's known as vanishing twin syndrome. Medical research, including a 2003 study in the journal Human Reproduction, estimates that as many as 1 in 8 pregnancies may initially start as a twin pregnancy. In the vast majority of these cases, one of the embryos fails to develop and dies very early on. In a bizarre biological twist, the surviving fetus often absorbs some of the cells of its deceased twin. This means the surviving person is a chimera, an individual made up of 2 genetically distinct populations of cells. They carry the ghost of their twin within their own body for the rest of their life. Most chimeras never know they are one. The evidence only appears incidentally through genetic testing that might reveal, for example, that the DNA in their blood is different from the DNA in their skin. This is not a metaphor. It is a literal biological haunting, a testament to the fact that the boundaries of a single self are far more porous and mysterious than we could ever imagine. The story of twins is not one of magic, but of a biology so strange it might as well be. The revelation that emerges from this deep dive into the world of twins is not what most people expect. The shocking truth is not that twins are secretly telepathic or that they are supernatural anomalies. The truth is far more profound and universally applicable. The study of twins, especially those reared apart, forces us to confront a deeply uncomfortable fact about the human condition. Our sense of a unique, self-authored identity is largely an illusion. The story of the Jim twins is not an outlier. It is a dramatic and undeniable demonstration of the immense power of our genetic blueprint. We are all born with a detailed script, a set of predispositions and tendencies that will shape our lives in ways we can barely comprehend. The environment, our upbringing, our choices, they are not the authors of our story. They are merely the editors. They can tweak the phrasing, adjust the pacing, and change the minor details. But the plot, the characters, and the major themes are already written in the ink of our DNA. This discovery fundamentally shifts our perspective. We stop seeing twins as a bizarre curiosity and start seeing them for what they truly are, the clearest window we have into the machinery of human nature. Their uncanny similarities are not a violation of the natural order. They are the most stark and visible expression of it. They reveal the hidden architecture that underpins all of our lives. The great mystery is not why identical twins are so alike. The real mystery is why the rest of us, who are all guided by a similar genetic inheritance, manage to convince ourselves that we are so radically different and free. The feeling of unease we get when we hear about the Jim twins is not about them, it's about us. It's the subconscious recognition that the puppet strings of our own biology are far stronger and more numerous than we ever wanted to believe. The climax of this investigation is the quiet, terrifying realization that the captain of your soul is not you. It is a four-letter code of A, T, C, and G, arranged in a sequence determined billions of years ago. The implications of this genetic realism are vast and unsettling, touching every aspect of modern society. If our personalities, intelligence, and even our political beliefs are significantly heritable, what does that mean for our most cherished ideals? Consider the concept of meritocracy, the belief that anyone can achieve success through hard work and determination. Twin studies suggest that the playing field is never level. Some individuals are born with a genetic predisposition for traits that our society values and rewards, like high intelligence or conscientiousness. This doesn't negate the importance of effort, but it forces us to acknowledge the powerful role of the genetic lottery in shaping life outcomes. This has profound consequences for our systems of justice and education. In a courtroom, could a defense attorney one day argue that their client's violent behavior was not a product of free choice, but an almost inevitable outcome of a genetic predisposition for aggression and poor impulse control? We are already grappling with this in a rudimentary way, but as our understanding of behavioral genetics grows more sophisticated, these questions will become more urgent. How do we assign responsibility in a world where free will is shown to be heavily constrained? Similarly, in education, if 70% of the variance in a student's academic potential is genetic, what does that mean for our teaching methods? It suggests that a one-size-fits-all approach is doomed to fail, and that we must create systems that recognize and adapt to the innate differences in how individuals learn. The relevance of this extends directly into our personal lives, especially in an era of consumer genetic testing. Millions of people are now sending their saliva to companies like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA to uncover their heritage. But these services are increasingly offering reports on genetic predispositions for everything, from caffeine consumption to the likelihood of developing Alzheimer's disease. We are, for the first time in history, being handed a copy of our own biological script. The lessons learned from a century of twin research are no longer abstract scientific findings. They are becoming part of our personal identity. Are we prepared to learn that we have a high genetic probability of developing depression, or that our children's academic struggles may be rooted in a heritability they cannot overcome through sheer will? The study of twins has opened a Pandora's box, and its contents are now shaping the future of medicine, law, and our most intimate understanding of who we are. So we return to the beginning, to the phantom pain, the shared thought, the life lived in eerie parallel. We now understand that this is not the work of magic or a psychic connection. It is the echo of a shared biology, a ghost in the machine of our DNA. The seemingly paranormal is, in fact, hypernormal. It is the purest expression of a biological law that governs us all, but which is laid bare for all to see in the mirrored lives of identical twins. They are a living, breathing reminder that the self is not a solitary island. It is inextricably linked to a biological inheritance, a family, and a species. They force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that our sense of who we are is not entirely our own creation. It is a legacy, an ancient code that we inherit and pass on, a script that we perform but do not write. Look in the mirror. The face you see, the thoughts behind the eyes, the personality you believe you have painstakingly built over a lifetime. It is a masterpiece of experience, choice, and memory. But what if the architect of that person was a stranger you never met? An ancient sequence of code written in a language of 4 simple letters. In the final analysis, how much of you is truly yours?